What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about Lucid, I want to go over some of the data points, what really moved it, and go over everything else that you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So Lucid did close in the green, 0.81%, 1836 the low, 1928 the high, and fairly good volume. So 7.5 million shares being traded, 8.7 is the average. Most of the volume did come in the second half of the day. So you can kind of see this nice spike here. So I'm going to break it down on what caused that. But today was a very interesting day for the EV market because the market was digesting Tesla's earnings. Of course, for face value, it wasn't all that great. And one thing that was really standing out to me is that we did have GM's earnings a couple days back, and they said that their kind of impacts from tariffs were somewhat minimal. In Tesla's case, they are citing 400 plus million. So it's kind of which one, like what is actually true. So we'll have to wait and see for Lucid's earnings just to see how they did fare with tariffs. But nonetheless, though, early in the morning, you did also have this. So Rivian saying that they are laying off more than 600 workers. And so this is usually something that Lucid follows with. So for those of you that have been kind of investing in Lucid for a while, you know that throughout 2023, Rivian lays off people, and then Lucid usually announces it like a month later. So this might be something that Lucid does bring up in their upcoming earnings. Typically, the market does see this as a positive. So again, something to keep in mind, as long as in Lucid's case, it doesn't really take away from the ability to ramp up, because this is something that the market really cares about, is them hitting their targets. So as long as they don't lay off any production, I'm sure over the last little bit, they've hired a lot of unnecessary staff, and I guess that's a nice way of putting it. So I think layoffs definitely should be welcomed by investors. But nonetheless, though, this is something just to kind of keep in mind. But aside from that, the only other thing that kind of came out was this. So this came out 159, does coincide with this spike. So it is fair to assume that big money was really buying Lucid because of this. But it does say that Nvidia said is working with Uber to advance autonomous vehicle development. And so in general, I think there's a lot more questions, and most likely this is why people got hyped up and it went down, because I think for face value, this people could assume that Lucid is somewhere or another going to be working with Nvidia too. But technically, the deal is that it's going to be Lucid, Uber, and Nuro. So technically Nuro and Nvidia, they don't work together, right? So it is going to be Uber, Nuro, and Lucid. So I think in general, this goes to show that maybe things might progress and potentially we might get some Nvidia partnership and working in there, even though technically Lucid does have a partnership with Nvidia that was announced back in 2023, although we haven't really heard too much from Lucid about that. And given the fact that they are a tech company, you would really assume that they'd be throwing Nvidia's name left, right, and center just to get some additional hype. But still, that's another problem that I have. But nonetheless, though, market did initially see this as a kind of a positive for Lucid, even though in my opinion, I don't really think that this is going to be worked into that Uber deal, only because of Nuro. And I don't really see Nuro leaving because Uber has a pretty big stake in a partnership with Nuro. So let me know your general thoughts on that. When it comes down to shorts, they did increase 832,000 shares, 31.94% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 40.5 million shares overall being shorted. So Lucid did do fairly well given the fact that shorts increased the amount that they did. So something just to keep in mind. Even looking here though, at the peak, shorts were increasing around 5 million shares. So going back over here, shorts made up for the majority of the volume today. And probably that's why you did have this right here, that spike, because shorts just saw this, assumed that it was going to really benefit Lucid, and then they kind of panicked. So that's probably how things did play out. Looking at the options, we had 2.4 million in calls, 4.4 in puts. 56% of all the options being done were bearish in nature. Clearly, you can kind of see as well, 4.3 million in premiums. between 150 and 155. That was some entity trying to get in and benefit from that hype. So they probably saw that news immediately and they kind of did some options trades. From a bull standpoint, you see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $21 range, or I guess consensus is between 1950 and 20, but bears are anticipating for it to be sub kind of 1850 going into tomorrow. With tomorrow being Friday, just take note of this. So you do have a lot of small amounts and then 46,000 in open interest at the 21. So most likely you're not going to see any gamma squeeze or anything like that. And most likely if Lucid kind of stays in the status quo where it is, then I'll be probably having to buy 800 shares of Lucid at 1950 because I did sell a put. But with my premium, pretty much I'll be my average or new average with the new shares is going to be around 1890, give or take. So not too far off from where it is currently. These are some of the transactions that did occur on the secondary market above $100,000. And this is why I always like to analyze data. So algos, I think, were really hyped up in the broader market because from this you can kind of see there wasn't really all that much in transactions, nor institutions truly buying. A couple big ones though, so 6.9, 1.6, 1.3, none of which are buys, as you can kind of see right there. Aside from that though, these are some of the transactions that did occur on the dark pool. So even this wasn't really that popular. So the highest transaction was 634,000. And then aside from that, 492,000. So not all that much. And when it comes down to the dark pool, it is very difficult in trying to distinguish what is buys and what is sells. You kind of have to match this, like the timestamps, with the actual chart, as well as kind of seeing some of the transactions before and after. So feel free to pause the video, do a little bit more of a deeper dive if that's your thing. But on the actual chart, we had a nice little bit of a recovery with the broader market. Still though, the technicals don't look all that great. Stochastic RSI is very, very oversold. So if there's a good piece of news or PR, then you could see a nice push higher, but Lucid's been relatively quiet, so don't anticipate any crazy news prior to Lucid's upcoming earnings. Looking at the market position for today, you see a little bit more willing buyers up until around that 1820. That seems to be where it does kind of just drop. So if, let's say, shorts or big institutions really do hit Lucid tomorrow, then you could see a little bit of a pull lower right here. But I think generally it is all going to come down to the data. So I'll go over that in a second. But there really hasn't been that much in news, nor any new analyst ratings or anything like that. So it was just merely piggybacking off of the broader market. But like I said, tomorrow is going to be a very big day because we do have CPI and also Michigan consumer sentiment. So big inflationary data points. And then the S&P Global is going to be putting out composite, manufacturing, and services. So most likely this is going to really solidify a opportunity for a rate cut. Because of all the recent events, you surprisingly did see a small chance, 1.1% of no cut. So I think with tomorrow's data, it will really hit home that we're going to have a 25 basis point cut for the October 29th meeting. So that is coming right around the corner. Let me know your thoughts on kind of just generally what happened with Lucid. Do you think that this Nvidia announcement and Uber announcement is going to benefit Lucid? Do you think that maybe Lucid is going to just work around and kind of do something with Nvidia more than what has already been done? Keep in mind, the PIF has a pretty big stake in Uber as well as Lucid, and Uber has a stake in technically Neuro. So we'll have to wait and see how that could all be played out where it doesn't offend one or another company or something like that. But do you think that Lucid is going to benefit from this or not? One final thing, pop over to my Patreon if you're looking for some solid buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. I put a daily day trades, numerous swing trades, worthwhile to pop over there and check that out. With all that said, appreciate all of you watching.